In the summer of 2022, South Korea was shaken by the sudden disappearance of a 51-year-old woman named Lee So-jin. She vanished without leaving a trace. Her family and friends searched desperately, but every lead seemed to go nowhere. Behind this mysterious disappearance was her younger boyfriend, Lee Ki-young, a man who appeared gentle on the surface but was hiding a devastating secret. Not only would he later be revealed as the one responsible for her tragic fate, but he also coldly took over her assets and used her identity for his own gain. To the outside world, he seemed ordinary. Yet when the truth came to light, the entire country of Korea was stunned, as if the crime had been pulled straight out of a thriller. What could cause a romantic relationship to end in such catastrophe? And why, even now, has the body of Lee So-jin never been found? Before we pull back the curtain on today's mystery, don't forget to like and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you so much. On the 25th of December, 2022, a Sunday that was also Christmas Day, the city of Paju, in Gyeonggi-do Province, lay under a blanket of snow. Shops along the streets were decorated with Christmas trees, filling the air with the joy of the season. That evening, Lee Ki-young's current girlfriend, referred to here as Miss A, left her home in the city of Goyang, as she often did, and drove north to Paju to visit him at his apartment. Before long, Miss A arrived at the upscale building where Ki-young lived. She entered the code for the electronic lock and stepped inside. She called out his name several times, but there was no answer. Quickly checking through the rooms, she realized he wasn't home. Assuming he had only stepped out for a while, she decided to wait. That's when she heard the sound of animals crying. Following the noise, she went out to the balcony where there was a small pet enclosure. Inside were 3 cats and a dog. They seemed restless and hungry, as if they hadn't been fed. Concerned, she opened the enclosure to let them out and began searching for food. She checked the kitchen cabinets, then the living room, but found nothing. Next, she entered the main bedroom to continue looking. As soon as she opened the door, she was met with an unusual odor, a smell she had never experienced before. Thinking something in the room might have spoiled, she started searching for the source. She looked around carefully, but everything appeared normal. Even the trash bin beside the bed was clean. When she reached the wardrobe, the strange smell grew stronger. Opening the closet door, she froze in shock. Inside, curled up on the floor, was a man. His body was motionless, and his clothes bore dark stains. Overcome with fear, Miss A screamed, rushed out of the apartment with trembling hands, and frantically dialed the police. When the Paju Police Department received her call, they immediately dispatched a large team to the scene. The area was sealed off, and the investigation began. Miss A guided officers to the bedroom, where they discovered inside the wardrobe the body of a man around 60 years old, showing clear signs of violence, particularly a severe injury to his head. The man found inside the wardrobe carried no wallet, no identification, and no phone. After a forensic examination, police determined that he had died from a severe head injury, and that his passing had likely occurred about 4 days earlier. Around the same time, authorities in the nearby city of Goyang received a phone call reporting a missing person. The caller explained that his father, a 60-year-old taxi driver from Goyang whom we'll refer to as Mr. B, had gone missing. He had left for work on the evening of the 20th of December but had not returned home. Mr. B's usual route was between Goyang and Paju, 2 neighboring cities. At 7 p.m. that night, he set out as he always did, behind the wheel of his cab. But after that evening, his family could not reach him. For 5 long days, his son grew increasingly anxious. It was completely out of character for his father to be unreachable for so long. He called repeatedly, but the phone was never answered. Then, at 3 a.m. on the 25th of December, Mr. B's son suddenly received a text message from his father's number. Right away, he noticed something was off. The way the message was written didn't sound like his father at all. He tried calling back, but every time, the call went unanswered. Another message came through, claiming Mr. B was busy and that his phone battery was running low. This only deepened the son's suspicions. When investigators compared details, they realized the man discovered in Lee Ki-young's apartment matched the description of the missing taxi driver. The family was called in, and with heavy hearts, they confirmed that the man found in Paju was indeed Mr. B. Police then questioned Miss A, the woman who had first called them. She explained that the apartment was not hers but belonged to her boyfriend, 31-year-old Lee Ki-young. Officers pressed further, asking her to describe her activities on the 20th of December, the night Mr. B had disappeared. According to Miss A, that evening Ki Young had driven to Goyang to meet her and her parents. He had invited them out for dinner at a local restaurant. The meal went well. Her parents were impressed by Ki Young. They found him polite, strong-looking, and someone who seemed capable of protecting their daughter. After dinner, her parents headed home on their own while Ki Young drove Miss A back toward Paju. That night, however, he had been drinking, and his steps were unsteady. Concerned Miss A warned him not to drive and suggested hiring a driver instead. But Ki Young took offense, insisting he hadn't drunk much and was perfectly able to drive. An argument broke out between them on the side of the road. Neither would give in. Frustrated, Miss A pushed his arm aside and left on her own. Still upset, Ki Young got back in his car and drove off by himself. The following day, when he had sobered up, Ki Young realized how poorly he had behaved and how much he had upset his girlfriend. To make amends, he bought a pair of matching couple rings worth 6 million won, around $4,600 as a gift for Miss A. Later, Ki Young and Miss A went shopping together for handbags and dined at an upscale hotel restaurant. Over the next few days, he spent lavishly nearly 54 million, won around $42,000. By the 25th of December, Miss A decided to surprise her boyfriend on Christmas Day to rekindle their relationship. But instead of joy, she stumbled into a nightmare, the discovery of a man gravely harmed, hidden inside his wardrobe. Police quickly suspected that Miss A's boyfriend, Lee Ki Young, was involved in the crime. By tracking his phone, they located him at a hospital in Goyang, where he was being treated for a hand injury. There, he was arrested on the spot and charged with murder. According to reports, in the early hours of the 25th of December, Ki Young had gotten into a fight with a stranger, leaving his hand injured. Surveillance footage showed him entering a barbecue restaurant alone that morning. Inside, he noticed a group of young men dining together. He approached them, greeted them warmly, and offered to cover their entire meal. Because it was Christmas Day, the men accepted without hesitation. At first, they thought he was simply being generous. But as drinks were poured, Ki Young began bragging about his supposed wealth, claiming he had inherited so much money that he would never need to work. At first, the group humored him, but his stories grew more exaggerated. Eventually, he went so far as to ask if they wanted to make money quickly, and even suggested dangerous ideas, asking if they would be willing to take someone's life for it. That statement made some in the group deeply uncomfortable. One hot-tempered man challenged him outside, and the confrontation quickly turned physical. Ki Young was injured in the scuffle and drove away shortly after. Following his arrest, Ki Young initially remained silent, but as evidence piled up, he eventually admitted to being responsible for the taxi driver's death. Using his statement and surveillance footage, police reconstructed the chain of events. At around 10 p.m. on the 20th of December, after having dinner with his girlfriend and her family, Ki Young drove his white SUV through the streets of Goyang. At an intersection, he collided with a silver taxi coming from the left. The driver of that taxi was Mr. B. Both men stepped out to inspect the damage. Almost immediately, Mr. B noticed the smell of alcohol on Ki Young, realizing he had been drinking and driving. This meant Ki Young would be fully responsible for the accident. And this was not his first time. At the age of 22, he had been caught driving under the influence in Sunday. Just 4 months later, he reoffended in Inn, and on that occasion even resisted arrest, biting a police officer's hand. Because he was serving in the military at the time, his case went to a military court, where he was sentenced to 1 year and 6 months in prison along with a heavy fine. Yet even after serving his sentence, he continued his reckless behavior. On the night of the crash with Mr. B, instead of reporting the accident, Ki Young proposed that they settle the matter privately. He offered compensation, which Mr. B agreed to. To finalize the payment, Ki Young invited the taxi driver back to his apartment. Once inside, however, tensions flared again. The two argued heatedly over the amount, and Mr. B threatened to call the police if he wasn't paid what was promised. The argument escalated beyond control. In a burst of anger, Ki Young grabbed an object inside the apartment and struck Mr. B. Within minutes, the driver collapsed and became unresponsive. Shaken, Ki Young panicked before regaining composure. He concealed Mr. B's body inside the bedroom wardrobe. He then drove the victim's taxi more than a mile away, erased the data from the dashboard camera, and returned to the apartment with Mr. B's phone and personal belongings. After the incident, Ki-young began impersonating Mr. B by sending text messages to his family, trying to create the illusion that he was still alive. But within days, Mr. B's son grew suspicious and reported the matter to police. During this time, Lee Ki-young was also misusing Mr. B's credit cards and personal information to obtain loans. He managed to steal nearly 54 million, won around 42,000 US dollars, using the money to buy couple rings for his girlfriend and spend extravagantly at luxury venues. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered a shocking revelation. The apartment Ki-young had used to hide the victim did not belong to him. Instead, it was registered under a woman who had gone missing months earlier. That woman was Lee So-jin, age 51. When questioned about her, Ki-young claimed they had once been romantically involved and lived together in the apartment, but that she had suddenly left without explanation and cut off all contact. This statement immediately raised red flags for investigators, especially when they discovered that the phone Ki-young was using also belonged to So-jin. Combined with his record of reckless behavior and his violent tendencies, police strongly suspected her disappearance was directly connected to him. This was the turning point that led them to broaden the investigation. During their inquiries, one of Ki-young's acquaintances recalled strange behavior from him around September 2022. He had spoken with unusual pride about a family member's recent death, but instead of showing sadness, he seemed oddly enthusiastic. Further financial records revealed that after Lee So-jin disappeared, large withdrawals had been made from her accounts. In addition, her apartment had been mortgaged, and the person taking out the loan was none other than Lee Ki-young. When bank staff visited to verify, Ki-young even claimed his parents had recently died and that he had inherited a large fortune. His excessive bragging only heightened their suspicions. When police returned to examine the apartment he had been using, forensic tests detected suspicious traces reacting to luminol in the living room, kitchen, and bathroom. More importantly, blood evidence was found on a wall near the main bedroom and bathroom. Testing confirmed it belonged to his former girlfriend, Lee So-jin. With this evidence in hand, investigators confronted him again. Whether cornered or calculating, Ki-young eventually admitted that he had caused So-jin's death. According to his account, So-jin had been working as a manager at a karaoke bar in Paju before entering into a relationship with him. Despite the nearly 20-year age difference, she fell deeply in love, never realizing he had hidden motives. Out of affection, she invited him to live with her in her apartment. During their time together, Ki-young confided stories of a failed marriage, claiming he had been forced to marry young and that only when he met So-jin did he finally understand true love. His polished demeanor and sweet words convinced her. At one point, he even proposed, proudly telling friends he had given her an engagement ring and purchased a luxury apartment. In reality, that apartment never existed. It was all a fabrication to swindle her money. He repeatedly borrowed from her under false pretenses, such as repairing the new apartment. Altogether, the loans amounted to nearly 3.5 billion won, around 2.7 million US dollars. Blinded by love, So-jin never recognized the warning signs. She gave without hesitation, never suspecting the truth. But after 4 months of dating, their relationship began to deteriorate. Ki-young grew distant, arguments increased, and finally one day, a heated quarrel erupted. In a fit of anger, Ki-young threw a tool in her direction. It struck her, causing her to collapse. She never recovered. Panicked and fearful, Lee Ki-young chose not to call for help. Instead, he tried to erase every trace of what had happened. The following day, he transported Lee So-jin's body to a riverbank outside the city and disposed of it. Afterwards, he returned to the apartment and continued living there as if nothing had occurred. To maintain the illusion that she was still alive, he used her phone to send text messages to friends and family, even changing her social media profile picture twice. When the financial support he had been receiving from So-jin disappeared, Ki-young began selling valuable items from the apartment, including the very engagement ring he had once given her. But the money ran out quickly. To keep up his lavish spending, he inserted her SIM card into his own phone, unlocking access to her credit cards. He withdrew cash and made online purchases, stealing about 39.3 million won, roughly 30,000 US dollars. He also used her credit cards for additional shopping sprees totaling nearly 42 million won, about 32,000 US dollars. In total, Ki-young drained over 80 million won, around 62,000 US dollars, from So-jin's accounts. But he didn't stop there. He used her personal information to take out fraudulent bank loans and even mortgaged her apartment, pocketing another 100 million won, close to 77,000 US dollars. Not long after, he entered into a new relationship with a woman who worked as a bar hostess, once again presenting himself as a wealthy heir. That woman would later become known as his girlfriend at the time of his arrest. The motive behind Jin's death has been the subject of debate. Many believe Ki Young acted purely out of financial greed, especially after borrowing nearly 3.5 billion won, about $2.7 million US, from her without any intention of repayment. Some suggest he may have planned the crime from the beginning. Ki Young, however, insisted it was not premeditated. Yet investigators later found that, before her death, he had searched online for the dangers of certain poisons and for ways to unlock mobile phones. 4 days after his arrest, the Northern Gyeonggi Police convened a special review committee of 3 senior officers and 4 external members. Under Korea's Special Act on Violent Crimes, they evaluated the brutality of his actions, his risk of reoffending, and the public's right to know. The committee ultimately voted to release his personal information and driver's license photo to the media. Born in 1991 in Paju, Gyeonggi Province, Lee Ki-young never held a steady job. He often reinvented himself, claiming at times to be the youngest son of a wealthy family or the grandson of a real estate tycoon. From a young age, he had developed a habit of lying, frequently fabricating stories about hardship to borrow money. He once claimed that his mother was disabled and that his family was destitute, hoping to gain sympathy. The money he borrowed was quickly wasted on indulgence. When his lies were exposed, he would scramble for excuses. Over time, friends distanced themselves, unwilling to associate with him. After graduating high school, he joined the military, where he continued to exaggerate his background, even claiming to be married and living with his wife in Malaysia. His fellow soldiers quickly saw through the facade, noting that he often borrowed money without ever repaying it. Rumors spread that he had publicly declared himself the grandson of a wealthy family but admitted he received no financial support from either his father or grandfather. His grandfather passed away while Ki-young was serving in the military at age 21. After his discharge, he drifted from job to job. He briefly worked in human resources at a company in one city for about 6 months, the longest he ever stayed in a position. Later, he joined a construction firm that was developing waterway projects for agriculture. There, he boasted to co-workers that he was the son of the company's president and a former soldier who had served in Iraq. At age 27, he remarried for the second time, but the marriage collapsed within 4 years. By 31, he was in a relationship with Lee So-jin, who was 51 at the time. The two lived together in her apartment, where they cared for 3 cats and a dog. To neighbors, Ki-young seemed polite and approachable, always smiling and greeting others. When the case finally made headlines, internet users tracked down an old Facebook account believed to belong to him. Posts dating back 10 years showed a younger, less refined version of himself, with photos suggesting military service. In reality, by then his term had already expired, yet he continued staying with the military under questionable circumstances. Adding to the inconsistencies, his constant borrowing from fellow soldiers painted a stark contrast to the image of wealth he projected. These financial struggles, combined with his deep need to appear successful, likely fueled both his psychological pressures and his reckless behavior. Just a month before his arrest, Ki-young walked into a local restaurant and introduced himself to the owner. They quickly struck up a conversation. He told the man that he was already over 50 years old, a statement that shocked the owner, since Ki-young looked much younger. Ki-young explained that he was a well-known figure in the entertainment industry and maintained his youthful appearance by taking meticulous care of his skin. The restaurant owner believed him, finding the explanation convincing. Ki-young went on to claim he was managing a film production project in its development phase, even inviting the man to invest. Fortunately, before any deal was made, the restaurant owner learned of his arrest through the news. He later admitted he couldn't imagine what might have happened had he accepted the invitation. Lee Ki-young even went so far as to invite the restaurant owner to his home to discuss a supposed film project. Fortunately, before any meeting could take place, the man saw news reports about Ki-young's crimes. He later admitted he couldn't imagine what might have happened had he accepted the invitation. The case sent a chill through the community and sparked widespread fear. Although both criminal cases had been uncovered, the body of Lee So-jin was still missing. Police launched multiple searches along the river where Ki-young claimed he had disposed of her, even escorting him back to the scene to pinpoint the exact location. But each time, he changed his story. At one point he said he had left her in a field, and later claimed he had buried her by the riverbank. The two locations were nearly 2 kilometers apart. Every time he gave a new version, Ki Young explained it away by saying the events had happened too long ago, and his memory was unclear. Experts noted that heavy rains had fallen for several days after So-jin's disappearance. If she had been buried near the river, flooding could have washed away evidence. If her body had been placed in the river itself, the strong current flowing as fast as 1 meter per second could have carried her downstream toward the Han River. Criminal psychologists pointed out that Ki Young's constant shifting of the disposal site, along with changing details about the supposed weapon, could have been his way of playing games with investigators. They emphasized that locating both the victim and the object used would be critical to determining whether the act was deliberate or not. Ki Young seemed to understand this, deliberately altering his statements each time. And with thick winter snow covering the riverbanks, searches grew even more difficult. Further investigation of the apartment revealed 4 distinct DNA profiles. 1 male and 3 female. The male was identified as the missing taxi driver, Mr. B. The women's samples belonged to the apartment's original owner, to Miss A. Ki Young's current girlfriend, and to an unidentified female. This discovery raised serious doubts about Ki Young's testimony. On the day of his arrest, police had already found a cell phone in his possession belonging to another woman who had been reported missing for some time. Investigators believed the unidentified DNA might belong to her and began trying to confirm whether she was still alive. As the probe widened, police carried out a nationwide review of missing persons. They also examined Ki Young's call history. In 2022 alone, he had contacted at least 380 different people, far more than normal for a single individual. Most of these contacts were people he had met in nightlife settings, places where he spent freely while using multiple phones and fake identities. Investigators concluded this pattern suggested there could be more victims. His tactics followed a clear pattern. If the target was a woman, he pursued her intensely, as he had with Lee So-jin, often leading to financial exploitation and, in her case, fatal consequences. If the target was a man, Ki Young would present himself as a successful businessman, describing a fabricated career in order to trick them into investing. When suspicions arose, he invented even more elaborate lies to draw them in further. He even created fake business data to register shell companies, securing a fraudulent COVID-19 relief grant of about $7,700 for one of his enterprises. As detectives pieced together his activities, they realized Ki Young had been juggling multiple lives. Beyond his relationship with Miss A, he was simultaneously dating several other women, most of whom he had met at bars and karaoke clubs. Many of them dreamed of marrying into wealth and status, which made them especially vulnerable to his deception. However, among all the individuals connected to Lee Ki Young, none matched the unidentified DNA found inside the apartment where the crime had taken place. Investigators later determined that the DNA belonged to a cleaning worker, someone who had been hired multiple times by Ki Young after the incident with his former girlfriend, to tidy up the apartment. 3 weeks after Lee Ki Young's arrest, prosecutors indicted him on 5 charges: murder, robbery, disposal of a body, fraud, and embezzlement. 2 months later, on the 22nd of February, 2023, the case officially went to trial. In court, Lee Ki Young admitted his crimes and offered an apology to the victims' families, claiming he was willing to provide compensation. Regarding the location where he had hidden Lee So-jin's remains, the defendant stated he would cooperate with police in their search. In the first trial, the court sentenced Lee Ki Young to life imprisonment. At the appeal hearing on the 19th of October, 2023, the life sentence was upheld, with an additional order that he wear an electronic monitoring device for 30 years. Prosecutors had originally pushed for the death penalty, but the court rejected that request. The reasoning given was that Lee Ki Young had shown remorse by confessing and paying about $23,000 in compensation to the victims' families, so a death sentence was deemed unnecessary. This case not only shocked the public in South Korea but also left deep social and psychological scars. It stands as a warning about the hidden dangers within intimate relationships, especially when trust and money become entangled. It also sparked ongoing debates about the legal system, criminal sentencing, and how best to protect potential victims in order to prevent similar crimes in the future. What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And before you leave, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next true crime story.